We're back on Steel and Vance, and you know what? Again, we're talking safe supply. We're talking decriminalization in British Columbia of some really hardcore street drugs in the name of saving lives. Will it work? Is it working? And what do people think about it?
This is the most devastating and aggravating social problem we have. And if you say, I don't know anyone in my family, in my world that's a drug user, I don't care. Well, we are spending billions of dollars trying to address this problem. We're not getting anywhere, and we're still seeing record numbers of deaths. So much so that an article came out in the last couple of days saying, a new poll, that 1 in 5 of us knows somebody who's died from drug use.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had anyone in my direct circle, but I definitely know lots of people who've lost loved ones.
Yeah. Well, we've interviewed them here. People we know, friends of friends. Tragically and sadly, so many young people. Because while you want to think it's a downtown east side problem, it's not. It's in bedrooms and basements and places where people are using alone, often rurally, often people who were hurt on the job, prescribed pills to help them with their pain medication, with their pain by way of medication, and that medication gets cut off and then they go to street drugs. Right. That is predominantly what is driving this.
There's a lot of people who are just recreational users, and I'm thinking, really? So you're making a decision in the middle of a toxic drug crisis to use your coke or your meth or whatever your recreational drug is and play Russian roulette with your own life? That makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. We've had some criticism this week from the Globe and Mail, Gary Mason, talking about decriminalization. Let's do that. Let's remove the stigma. He's saying that's not working because we've got open drug use with people who are not afraid to get caught.
That's something that blows my mind in this town, in this province, in fact, but in this city. Being a born and raised Vancouverite, and people arguing as to whether or not we should restrict people from using hard drugs in parks and playgrounds. I asked myself and you, how did we get to a point where that was okay? Never mind, we're questioning whether we should pull back on that. And there is a whole discussion around that as well. Our good friend and colleague at CHEK News, Rob Shaw, political correspondent for CHEK, joins us now. And Rob, you wrote an incredible piece on this on the orca.ca. And we wanted to pick your brain about what your take is on this. Give a little bit of a synopsis of your column to our viewer, please.
Well, we had a kind of an extraordinary press conference from Dr. Henry, the provincial health officer, the chief coroner, and the children's representative, all saying, look, like they're trying to push back against critics of decrim and safe supply, saying there's no evidence these are causing more deaths or more addictions, especially amongst children. But they weren't really content to just stop at defending the program, and they pushed to this sort of future vision for drug regulation in BC that I think might surprise some people, and I wrote about, which is a suggestion and an open question whether the government should boost safe supply, so the clean version of government drugs, to push organized crime off the streets and the toxic drugs that they sell off the streets. And then Dr. Bonnie Henry raised this idea of, well, maybe in the long term, we should move to a model of regulation and presumably sales, because she mentioned the cannabis model as being a type of way that government could get in the business of licensing and proving the safety of a product and then distributing it, which I wrote about. I'm not quite sure we have wrestled with those questions as a society. I'm not sure they've been asked in that way. Do we want the government to be doing that? Is that the extension of these experiments on safe supply and decrim that we have started? Did we think that's where we were going, and where is the public on that? So they are fascinating kind of questions to be wrestling with.
I'll tell you where this member of the public is with it. I don't want people to die. I want a solution, but I am not okay with the government getting into the business of selling and creating meth and heroin and fentanyl and what have you, and then selling it in, a sanctioned drugstore like a cannabis store. I'm just not there because I don't see, has any other jurisdiction in the world done that we're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no, and not in the way that we're doing cannabis. That whole idea of selling or giving, depending on how we would work that model, versions of cocaine and heroin and meth, the prescription kind of versions of that, or even the safe versions of that, is not. I don't think that was how any of this was billed to the public when the exemption from Health Canada for safe supply and decriminalization when that sort of occurred. And I think the NDP government's in a bit of a tough spot here because the polling would suggest, and just the public sentiment would suggest, a kind of frustration at where we are at in this crisis. More than 12,000 people dead in 6-7 years. What we're doing isn't working, but advancing it into this realm is a conversation that hasn't happened yet. And to create public policy, you need public buy-in. And that was what struck me by the press conference. I'm not quite sure that there would be public buy-in for that if that's the direction BC wants to go.
Mm-hmm. And I find that interesting because when reading your column and watching the press briefing and hearing that sort of strategy, I was shocked by it. I thought, oh, sorry, we're gonna lean in on the supplying of more in trying to get rid of the black market. If that were possible, would that not have been done long ago? Because the black market's not gone in the cannabis industry either. And as, like you said, for public buy-in piece, I think that collectively, as we sit and discuss this, those thoughts of going down the road of escalating the amount of involvement the government might have in selling these hardcore drugs doesn't land well, for lack of a better way of putting it. I'm shocked by it. And I'm sure many of our viewers right now are like, what? We're what? So where do we go from here, do you think?
We're wrestling with an even more kind of a basic question about what happens to the safe supply we're prescribing right now. And is it being diverted on the street to be used for resale for other drugs? The coroner and provincial officer admitted it's being stockpiled by some people. It is being traded. It is out on the street for sale. And so there's a problem there too. And you know, the coroner and the provincial health officer are talking about changing the model a little bit to allow for higher potency because it's not meeting all people's addictions needs, and better distribution. You can get it in the downtown east side, safe supply, but in northern BC and rural areas you can't. So they're moving the model, adjusting it on the one hand, and then they're proposing kind of a thought experiment on the other of where it might go in the future. And those two things are different. Changing safe supply to meet the needs of people right now is one thing. Expanding it, I think, beyond that is another. And that's the sort of policy question, I guess, that came out of the press conference.
And it's interesting because the BC United Party has really been holding the EB government's toes to the fire on the drug issue. They have been pushing, I think we're going to maybe see some bylaws in public parks to stop the open drug use. Do you think that's coming down the pipe?
Public buy-in for that, by the way.
Yeah, I think the province has no choice. They've admitted that they have to do something there because municipalities are all over the place on those bylaws. So the Premier has said he'll do something. His critics in the opposition, BC United, are saying this is reckless. It wasn't well thought by the province in either safe supply or decrim. We're seeing the unintended consequences of that, and the government's not responding. So you have government already under fire over here. You have proposal to expand, which was kind of haphazard and I think maybe undermined the defense of the existing program, which hasn't been well defended, and then now is being thought expanded. And if the argument from critics is this wasn't well considered and there's unintended consequences, then just charging forward is opening up even more criticism. And that's where the Opposition United and the federal Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre have just made a huge issue out of this. It's hard to ignore.
Mm-hmm. We'll be talking about this for a while. Rob Shaw, thank you so much for your insights. And that was a really interesting, thought-provoking column. We all have to wrap our heads around where this might be going. Thanks so much for your time on this.
Thanks for having me on.
I know we all agree we would like to see people to stop dying of tainted drugs. That is at the root. Nobody is suggesting that we just let people die, but trying to figure out the path forward is a difficult one and a complex one for
I'd rather see more effort, more money put toward getting people off the drugs and dealing with addictions than offering more drugs that won't kill people, but that's just me.
I'm kind of with you on that one.
All right, still ahead. Are you fed up with our political leaders in Ottawa? Are you tired of the finger pointing, the name calling, the accusations? If you're feeling like a political orphan, stay tuned. Political scientist and author David Moskrop joins us in studio next.
And we got our fan viewing parties to show you. We love Diane and Karamios. Thank you for sending in your photo. Heather and Port Hardy also watching us with Trevor Linden. That was so fun with Trevor Linden. Join us here on the program with your pictures. Just send them in at Steel Talk or Steel Talks, depending on your platform, at Jody Vance, and we will get you on the show.